Good uncanny evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is time once again for your favorite show of the week. This week, though, we have our co-host back. This guy
That's
has
right.
not been around last
That's
week.
right. Yep.
Last week, if you guys joined us, we had Daniel Benoit on the show, and he and I had a great conversation, even though we had technical difficulties. I had to actually put earphones in and listen to the YouTube podcast and wait 3 seconds before he answered before I could say anything. So you guys didn't catch that because we were smooth about it. But we're back. We're back. This week we're talking about what if human beings are aliens but from the future? What to do about it?
Hypotheticals. I always like those hypotheticals.
So do I. So do I. Anyways, what's up, James? Welcome on in. We're going to be having a couple folks in. Business news time, business news time, business news, let it rain on you. Yeah, business news.
That's the new business news jingle.
That's the new business news jangle.
We're going to cut it out of this segment and produce it and put it up there so it plays every time.
Okay, so we have some really good news for you goofballs out there. No, I'm kidding. I love all y'all, for real. You guys are amazing. Anyways, we got some good news for you guys. We're assembling a team of people, and we've already got 2 people on the Uncanny team. I can't reveal those names yet. We got one that's going to be helping with our artistic side of merchandise, and we got another that's going to be bringing us some hot takes from these paranormal streets. So they will be revealed in due time. We're going to have a big old guest speaker roundtable, and we're going to put them on in. We're going to talk about what I like to talk about. We're going to talk about some business ventures, what we got coming up. If you would like to sponsor this Uncanny Earth, by all means, do so. Do so. For just 2 cents a day, you can help little Spider here finally get a cup of coffee. But no, seriously.
I could use some coffee.
See? Do you have
sponsorship
coffee?
rates are really good, actually. I had them written down, and I didn't know we were going to talk about them tonight, so I didn't prepare them. But sponsorship rates are really good. You're going to be helping the show. We're going to mention you or your business or whatever you want on the show in a little spot. And we're not going to do it in a weird sellout way. I used the products from Jim Bob's Barbecue, and they were delicious. I don't know. But we'll prop what you do every show for however long that you've paid, for a month or forever, super simple. And you will help us. You will help yourselves with more customers, more ad revenue. Everybody wins.
Everybody wins. Even Spider wins. He can get that cup of coffee.
I can. I need that coffee.
Speaking of, next time you come over, I have new coffee. I get some Aroma of the Andes coffee, but I got a new joint for you to try.
Sample.
It's good stuff. Tonight, really tired this evening. Hey, if you fall asleep, that's all right, man. We're just glad you're here, James. We always appreciate you showing up. James is been listening for a while now, probably maybe 8 months to a year at this point, I think.
Yeah.
And we appreciate everybody that listens. So thank you. We definitely appreciate you.
Facts.
I know Scruffy will be along before too long. I know Apple's here. I know Deadpool is supposed to show up.
If he's not, he will be bothering you about that Spotify tomorrow.
He will bother me about that Spotify until the cows come home. And then he will bother me about it even more after that. So, yeah, he's right. He's right. I do need to put it up there, though.
When you get caught up with it, you're going to be up, the latest episode is going to be there. You're going to be like, yeah, I'm good. He's going to hit you up. He's going to be like, so next week's episode, why isn't it up yet?
Oh, and
I can't work in the future. He'd be like, no, next week's episode, you got to have it up already.
No, that's the thing about him that I absolutely love, because he will keep us on our toes. He will help keep things right where they need to be, which is awesome. And at the same time, he will also have just all around good stuff. I think having him remind us of that is a good thing. So it's good stuff. Anyways, guys, welcome to another episode, a great episode we have planned up for you guys tonight. We are talking about if aliens, and by my aliens, I mean like Greys, reptilians, the Nordics, are really just us, but in the future. We have surpassed our evolutionary traits, inherited new traits, which they say that it would take roughly 14 billion years for us to develop new evolutionary traits because there's too many people and not enough catastrophes. Because with catastrophes brings environmental change brings evolutionary change. So think about that as we get into this tonight. Oh, we had a little bit of a weird thing happen, probably a glitch in the Matrix. I don't know. I've been watching some spooky movies lately, so it's been spooky. So be careful. Um, so like I said, the theory that goes around, it's a bunch of different theories. It's the time travel hypothesis. It's the chrono visitor. It's all sorts of things, not just related to aliens, but close enough. Now, I don't know if you guys know this. If any of you have ever read The Time Machine by H.G. Wells, fantastic book, fantastic movie.
Yeah,
I've read and seen
yeah. It
both.
has, I think it has two movies. It has one that was relatively modern,
Oh yeah, I
and it
saw that
has an
one.
old one. Yeah,
I
the
saw
modern one
both.
with like Orlando Jones is the hologram.
Was it Orlando Jones or was it Orlando Bloom?
No, Orlando Jones.
Is- Are you sure?
Yeah,
Okay, just curious.
yeah,
I think Orlando Jones was on Mad TV though.
yeah. He had dark skin. He was a dark-skinned hologram man, not like Orlando Bloom, who's a very light-skinned, not hologram man. I got the DVD, so I know.
You would know. You would know. Um. Anyway, so the main character goes into the future, and humans end up evolving into two different types of species, humanoid species. The first one is the Elioi, and they're the aristocracy. And the second one, which is very known in multiple pop culture references, are what is known as the Morlocks. Now, the Morlocks live underground, and the Eloi live above ground. It is thought that the Eloi are actually intellectually um, inferior based on the simple fact that as we continue to evolve, it is said that our skulls will get bigger and our brains will get smaller, which is very interesting considering the appearance of a gray alien is a bigger head, a bigger skull. So that would mean less brain size. Just something to think about. And that's just a one example. There's a couple other examples of this. There's a few different uh, pop culture stuff out there that discusses man being sort of this time traveling alien. But I think what we're looking at isn't so much the idea of us time traveling. It would be more of something of us in the future after we have hit our evolution limit for our traits. Our traits then go over, but it would take about 14 billion years because there's too many people on the planet and not enough catastrophes, like I had stated previous and prior. Let's get into the George Hoover and the Roswell incident. Now, for those of you that don't know, George Hoover was a commander and a close associate of everybody's favorite rocket scientist, Dr. Werner von Braun. He was also associated with the Office of Naval Research and a pioneer of the space programs and aviotic and astronautical device inventions. Hoover aided in von Braun's Project Orbiter, which more or less was the launch of the Explorer 1 American satellite, the very first American satellite. The man had some very interesting passions. Cosmology and philosophy played a role for the reason of his theories, and he believed that we could technically put a base on both the moon, so a nice lunar base, and a nice Martian base on Mars. Something to keep track of on this one because the more we technologically advance in our societies, the more we evolve technologically, the more and more places like the moon, places like Mars are going to be used as jump off points. I think Mars, especially, would be used as a jump off point to get further into our deep space realms of Saturn and Neptune, Pluto, and then past Pluto. You'd have to go all the way out. And so here's this guy that, you know, he knows all this stuff about space. And this was at a time in America where space and that sort of thing, the technology, space, aviation, was all relatively newer considering the time frame that we live in, where we see planes flying overhead all the time and helicopters and futuristic craft. He was on that sort of excuse me, precipice of its full um, interaction with society and placement in mankind. Now, in 1957, Admiral Firth. Now, if you guys went back a couple episodes, and I'm sure that Deadpool would probably be chiming in here and be like, "You didn't do that on Spotify yet, though." We talked about the Philadelphia experiment. That was, I think, about a year ago,
Yeah,
and
it's been a while.
he was part of that whole thing when he received the case for the UFO by Morris K. Jessup. A copy ends up in the hands of Hoover. This version is sent to the ONR, had handwritten comments by Carlos Allende. That's the same Carlos Allende who witnessed the disappearance of the USS Eldridge and what would be known as the Philadelphia experiment. These handwritten notes were very interesting in that they were very similar to the things Hoover was working, discussing, and inventing. Magnetic fields, gravity fields, cosmic rays, and cloaking technologies were all things that were in this book that Hoover was very much interested in. We have to understand something here. The more mankind pushes forward technologically and becomes more sound and more advanced, the more things like magnetic fields, gravity rays, cloaking technologies, that sort of thing is going to become bigger and better, and maybe even be able to ascertain some string theory information. He made several comments that were later corroborated to a History Channel associate via author William J. Bernice, and he goes on to say the following that was regarded aliens and the Roswell incident. He says UFOs are not the big secret, which I don't know about you guys. That'd be a big secret to me if I saw one. It is the entities behind them that was of most concern. So the entities behind them, the entities behind these UFOs were what they were really seriously wondering, like, hey, what is going on here? What is this? What is that? And in fact, it was a crash event of visitors from somewhere else. We already know this. The entities were not so much interplanetary as much as they were literally also time travelers. They are extratemporal. The visitors were clearly from the future. There was no reason to believe that they may even be us from a future Earth. Now, the way this is worded, because I took this verbatim because I wanted to make sure you guys knew how I said it. The way that it's read is that there isn't a reason to believe, and this very well could be a thing that would be real and something that would definitely happen. These future humans have the ability to manipulate the reality around us, which, if you have been watching our show, we did an episode on the Dyson spheres and the Kardashev scale. Now, at the height of the Kardashev scale, they're at, I want to say 11 now. The original was only so many, then 11, I think, is like the highest one at this point. Basically, you're God. You've transcended into godhood. You can create and manipulate your own stars, your own universe, and use the energy of your universe to create people, beings, entities, animals, all of that. So that's very far in advance. These visitors are able to use their power of consciousness in extraordinary ways to morph reality. And he says, we human beings are far more powerful in potential than when we ever dreamed that we are. We don't yet comprehend our extraordinary future capabilities. And the visitors remain at essence through corporeal and physical, and secret attempts at reverse engineering the visitors' crash material was made. Now, I don't know if you guys are familiar with memory metals. So memory metals are things like titanium that will take back their shape. Well, titanium has memory metal properties that take back their shape. Like if you crunch up memory metal, it'll come back into what it was previous and prior. So just some thoughts to think about while we're discussing aliens in the future. Spider, what do you think so far? What are some of your thoughts on this?
Well, it's interesting because, as we talked about, if I remember correctly, with the Philadelphia experiment, we have people who've witnessed these things, but there's been a pretty big attempt at the other end, a really big disinformation campaign to say, look at this guy's credentials, they're crap, look at this, they're crap, look at all this. And so it's all kind of comes down to one person telling us stories about it, but it's really not outside the realm of possibility because as our science has advanced, we know about other dimensions. We know for a fact, scientifically, well, I mean, I can say scientifically proven, but scientifically proven is only proven until something else disproves it.
That's right.
So let's bear that in mind. But for the moment, scientifically proven that we have other dimensions other than what we can experience right here.
Yes.
And so if you look at it from that perspective, you don't even have to necessarily think, oh, well, they're aliens from space, whatever. They could be interdimensional travelers.
Yes.
And alternate dimensions have different rates of time flow, they have different compositions. And if that's true, they could potentially be people from this timeline or a timeline very similar to ours. So it opens up a lot of good thought experiments.
Yes.
Um, whether or not we'll really be able to dig deep into that, it it's all hypothetical at this point, of course, based off of just what one or two people have said, but it is plausible. It is definitely plausible.
I think as far as we've came in the past 50 to 100 years, I think that says something. And who knows what else we don't have out there right now. Who knows what the government's working on? Who knows what the government has?
We've
What they've
got
obtained from Roswell, what they've obtained from
mhm,
different crash sites, what they obtained from the Flatwoods Monster incident, what they have obtained as a whole to totally change the landscape of technology in a way that would put us ahead in an evolutionary chance, or allow us to genetically manipulate DNA in order for us to sort of evolve further
mhm,
from what we once were. Now, obviously, me and Spider and everybody listening, you guys, we would not be able to be genetically engineered. I mean, we could, but it would be a different process. But, being able to, while the baby is in the womb, being able to genetically manipulate its DNA in order so that it can survive this, or it can do that, or it's this, or it's that, is a very interesting concept because genetic engineering isn't a fairy tale. It
mhm,
does
mhm.
happen. It's very
It's
much
advancing
tested.
too. Um, people tend to forget that we are actively every single day, and I don't mean we as in like me sitting on my couch with Rob.
Mhm.
Actually, like we're cloning people,
Right.
but
But you don't know if we
scientists
are.
could be. Scientists right now are actively cloning animals
Yep.
all the time. I mean, if
Mhm.
several years ago, when I was a lot younger, we had Dolly the sheep,
Yep. I remember Dolly.
right? It was a big deal. It was the first
Yeah.
animal successfully cloned, so it was like actually functioned bodily. It didn't have super like health problems and things like that. Since then, that work has continued.
Yes.
And they have cloned all kinds of things that have continued to survive. They're getting into higher organisms. They're getting
Yep.
into primates, which is where they're having some setbacks, but they've had successes there too. They have successfully cloned
Right.
a primate. I don't know if it was a chimpanzee or what it was. I saw the article. It wasn't too long ago, but things have been crazy here, so it's out my brain already. But we're getting into these technologies that years ago you would think that's not possible. There's no way. Like now we're finding alternate realities. We're finding we're cloning more creatures. We're cloning. They're talking about that mammoth that they're going to clone
Yeah, I saw that. I've
by like
been kind of
next
keeping up on
year. I
that. Yeah, I've
think
been
it's
kind of
like
keeping
really
on that.
soon.
Yeah.
They might even do it this year. I don't
If
remember
they
how
if
soon it
they
was,
clone a
but
mammoth, that's going to be very interesting because it's just Jurassic Park. Now you're just creating Jurassic Park at this point, really.
mhm, mhm. They don't know how it's gonna act with other animals. They don't. They're assuming it's gonna be like an elephant, and maybe it will be, but maybe it won't.
Here's the issue. I don't see it getting along. There's a reason mammoths don't exist anymore. There's a reason that they were pushed out and whatever took their place.
Mm,
Elephants, um, tusked and horned animals. You know what I mean? I don't necessarily think that bringing woolly mammoths back is a good idea, but you could always use them as food.
Well, that's part of the issue too. Like people assume that that's why they went away, but it was also a changing climate. It was the planet was changing at the
Yeah.
time. A lot of factors went into play. Sure, early man hunted them pretty heavily because it was
Yeah.
the largest source of meat you could find. I mean,
Sure
why
was.
wouldn't you? If you're just a dude with a spear and a loincloth and you're just like, I'm hungry and I can't get anything else, I'm going to go after that because it's a lot of food. But there's other factors that caused it to die out. Like the planet has changed and it continues to
Yes.
change. And so we don't know how it's going to react to how the world is today. And then when we talk about, oh yeah, just breeding things genetically for food,
Yeah.
it's just adding to
And
kind of
really
a problem we already have.
what that doesn't account for too, what we're not accounting for right now in this episode, is what diseases come from that.
Mhm.
Eating that meat, introducing it into your body, and then what are the nutrients? What are the vitamins? What is everything else coming with it? Is it going to be more of a steak like
Mhm.
food? I don't know.
Well,
I go ahead.
it's pretty easy too because I don't mean easy like it's easy to explain, but like
Hmm.
we as people, we have our appendix, right? We
Hmm.
don't use the appendix for anything anymore. We used to. Generations and generations and generations, our ancient ancestors ate things that the appendix was meant to break down.
Right.
But we don't eat that anymore. We don't use it. So what if the mammoth or whatever other ancient creatures have things in them that we can't digest anymore? We've come a long way from Neanderthal and
Yeah.
Denisovian and even our earliest version of modern man as we believe it. We've come a long way from that. So people thinking they're going to line up for mammoth steaks and be like, "Oh yeah, this is going to be great. I'm first in line for a mammoth steak." You might be sitting on the toilet at the minimum for a while.
Or you might be in the emergency room getting your stomach
That
pumped.
is even worse. Like you could have all kinds of other health things that could
Yep.
happen. You don't know.
And I think to get back kind of on topic of what we're talking about tonight, what if we don't need food? What if we don't need food
Mm.
and or water? We just exist. We've crossed a threshold into a point in time where we as mankind, or whatever we're going to call it by that point, would essentially not need food or water. Maybe they no longer need intercourse to procreate. They no longer need the sleep and rest to keep themselves hyper vigilant and hyper focused. Maybe they already are. The one thing that we talked about was the decrease in cranial size, an increase in skull, and a decrease in
Density.
the brain. You know?
Yeah, like density. And
Yes.
that's an interesting thing too because we have a lot of really inefficient things with our bodies.
Hmm.
Like
Gallbladder.
when you think about
The
it, you're like,
gallbladder goes bad.
yeah, and like having to like produce waste and things
Hmm.
is pretty inefficient when you think about it.
Yep.
And I don't want to get into like a conversation about intelligent design or anything like that because this is not the show for it, and I don't want to ruffle anybody's feathers or anything. But when you think about it, it's really kind of like, well, wouldn't a more advanced being not have to do the things that we have to do every day
Right.
and expel these wastes and do these things and ingest these nutrients at a rate that we do?
Right.
And perhaps they don't. Perhaps eventually we will get to a point, and maybe those are who's coming back and taking a look at us, being like,
Yep.
this is how we used to be. This is a history lesson for us.
Well, and that was talked about in what we talk about here in a little bit. That the idea of a historical archaeologist, and what better way to relive time than if you go back and get to live it. I've thought about this before. I imagine, what if there's somebody from the future out there just watching us right now, you know sending back like, don't do this, don't do that, we got to save the planet. We wouldn't feel that effect because it
Look what
wouldn't do
these
anything
guys
for
doing on
us.
this radio show. Don't be
Yeah.
like them. They're drinking and they're talking about whatever. That's an object lesson, kids.
No, they're like, listen to more of them, make them rich and famous, sponsor them, sponsor them boys. I think personally that what we're seeing could very much be the evolutionary traits of future humans. We look at grays, they're these gray entities with these big balloon shaped heads, black eyes, black mouth, but suppose they're highly intelligent. They can talk via, what do they call it? Telekinesis. So they can kind of do a little bit of everything. But it got me to thinking, if we get to a point where we don't need to talk, what catastrophic event had to have happened in order for us to develop a trait where we can talk to each other via mental connection? Was it something where we hunted to damn near extinction? So whispering became part of the way to do things, and then all of a sudden we could hear each other's thinking, and then boom, now we're talking in our head. So what, we don't need our mouth anymore. If we're not eating, we're not drinking, we're not doing anything else, we don't need our mouths anymore. So what would be the point in having a mouth if you don't need it? Or one that doesn't actually do anything. Because if you don't need to eat and you don't need to sleep and you don't need to go to the bathroom, you pretty much are at an omnipotent point in your own life. And I think that maybe that's where they are. But I think to get there, I think what got them there, if they are in fact humans, was something so bad that it changed the entire landscape of their civilization.
When you think about it, it's almost because we see how we are right now. We've got a lot of things that happen that are like, we have viruses, we have environmental things that affect our ability to breathe and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
And you almost have to think about it like, what would a culture evolve into if they decided, you know what, we have to constantly just be like, not breathe through our mouths, not breathe as much as possible because there's toxins everywhere, or there's this, or there's that. So how do we communicate if we're not going to be using those apparatus? So it's almost like they evolved into a point to combat the environment. And that's a legitimate thing because the environment is always changing. Whether it's us that's changing it or not is still kind of open to debate. We do have an impact, but the environment is going to change. It has changed over the years many, many, many times.
Yes.
And so how do you deal with that? Like, with us, we had problems trying to understand each other with masks on our faces. And I'm not going to say anything about that. I'm just going to say it's difficult when your voice is muffled, right?
Yeah.
So imagine if you have to be like that 100% of the time, all the time, because the environment forces you to.
Yeah.
How else do you communicate? You can use sign language, as GZ says in the comments there. Or you can just, if you're a thinking species and you're at a certain point in your advancement, then maybe your mind will figure out how to communicate with other people. You'll be able to just beam the thoughts back and forth.
Yeah. And if you don't have to eat or sleep or go to the bathroom, then you don't really have anything you have to do in regards to stopping you from doing what needs to be done, I guess, in order to make that communication happen. Deadpool says he likes to communicate via text. Very interesting though, because that's still a way that could be like a text to speech thing, but text to your brain. So somebody texts something and then you hear it in your brain like a little message.
Another thing about the gray aliens, if we're focusing on them as like,
well,
the
just an example.
If we're using them for the sake of argument here,
right?
Don't let me turn into Ben Shapiro here. Hypothetically, for the sake of argument.
Well, you see, and there's nothing else that needs to be said. It's all good. It's all done. Everything's fine.
They have classically, in all the art that we have ever seen about them, they have the long elongated fingers,
Elgato
which are
DeVito, baby.
Good at manipulating things, which would be like keypads or things like that. They're not strong hands necessarily because they're real thin and kind of spindly, but they're good at, you'd think they'd be really good at typing. So maybe text as Jeezy said, Morse code, all that kind of stuff. It
Yeah,
could have been a
Morse code's cool.
pretext before
Yeah,
you develop the brain.
because if you don't need to conversate with somebody via speech,
Mhm.
you know, then you would use your mental capacity to talk to somebody. But how would you do it though? Would it be like, this is, hey Sarah, this is Global Glorp. I need you to connect me to Blockelt on, Percy on 5. She's like, hold please. And then she telepathically connects you. Because there's got to be a way to control it. I mean, there would definitely be a way to control it. But
And
I
that's the
think,
other thing too, because our emotions are everywhere.
yeah, as human
We're
beings, we're
highly
highly
emotional
emotional.
people. And the gray aliens from all classical depictions are not emotional. They're very
At all.
clinical. They're very
Yep.
logical. So where do we get to the point where we're able to be like, instead of letting us just like leak out, like,
Yeah.
I'm angry, I'm mad, I
Yeah.
like you, I hate you, I want to beat you up, I want to do her to you. How do we control those feelings without it going through the connection? That's an important thing to consider.
Yeah, because they don't want to read our thoughts and then think we're a hostile species and then end up invading the place and just killing their grandparents, their great 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 2 hours later. Great
Thanks,
great
Back
great
to the
great great
Future.
great great great. Yeah, I mean more or less. You got to realize something that these people that come back and are gray aliens or are Nordic aliens or reptilians. Nordic is very interesting because they're blonde hair, blue eyed people almost in a roundabout way. They're always blonde eyed. They never said there was one that had red hair that I've read.
Yeah.
I've never read any accounts of one having red hair. So the fact they have blonde hair, they're very nice. I also want to say the Star Children theory. There was a guy in Brazil, and his name escapes me at present, that supposedly got an alien woman pregnant, and he was never going to see the baby because she was from another planet. So
Yeah, took it with her when they left. I remember reading about that, and some of it was kind of, but at the same time, you always have to look at yourself and be like, you don't believe it because you feel like you're a really smart person. I'm smart. I don't believe these things. But at the same time, you're kind of like, well, it could be true. And you have to get a good balance between there because otherwise you're believing in Q and whatever and things like that. So
I think what we have to understand is the scientific aspect of wholly breaking down these traits and reintroducing new traits to survive in a. I mean, if you're a gray alien by that point, if you have, if you are just a person,
boo.
there we go.
Boo.
If you are a person who is already becoming, because there'd have to be a midpoint where the evolutionary trait would be a very mid thing. You'd be able to do it very slightly. And I don't see how, like, unless, like I said, I think if we are gray aliens, but in the past, and our descendants will become gray aliens, the informational aspect is what happens to turn us into that. Because if it's gray, that doesn't mean sun. You're not going to use the sun. You really don't need it. You're not going to go to you're not going to get a coffin because you're an alien. So you probably just get sent back home with everybody else. And that's about it. I mean, you'll have people that'll come through and play hero, and take care of the alien menace. But I think the aliens could definitely just 1, 2, how do you do? Buckle my shoe. Your planet's through. Like you crack to the core and do something to the core or something like that. Something that calls an ELE event. I don't know, man. I think that when we actually look, maybe that's a good point. But my thing is this: like, how and what planet? Are aliens dropping people off too? Are us, because the one thing about grays is they like experimenting on people and they like experimenting on cattle. And we experiment on people and we experiment on damn near everything. If it's alive, we will 100% experiment on it. It doesn't matter what it is.
The other thing too is that, and I think this came from a game I played years ago. I think it came from the Area 51 remake that was for the original Xbox.
The one made by Atari.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It ended up being like a first-person shooter, and it was basically just a horde
Yeah.
mode,
Oh
like
yeah.
go
Oh
into
yeah.
your own fights, man. But I think they mentioned in that game, and yes, it's a game, but the idea is still a good idea, that the gray aliens are physically weaker because they exist on planets or places like space stations or whatever that have lower gravity. So their muscles don't develop the same. Now, when you look at that, you could think, if they are us from the future, does that mean something gravitational happens to our planet? Which is a serious thing,
Yeah.
because we're
100%.
actually paying attention to that right now. There's been a lot of talk about the poles reversing and gravitational stuff happening, but it could also be that the planet is so messed up and something happened so badly that they had to move off into space stations, and they had to move off into somewhere else that had lower gravity. And so
It's a
they
very
didn't develop the same.
right. And because gravity is it's an ager, it'll age you. You know, gravity is a very different thing on our planet than it is on other planets that don't have near the amount of days, and some planets have more days than we do. And by days, I mean the time it takes for the sun to completely make a full rotation around the planet. Not every, not is it is. Let's see here. Yeah, I think so too. I think it's got to be a cold planet.
That's possible too underwater, because
Yeah,
underwater
that's a good point.
gravity is different
Yeah.
because of the weight of the liquid around you.
Nope.
Your muscles develop differently. If you spent a year deep underwater, just in the water itself, with like air being pumped in, whatever, and then went back up to the surface, you got to decompress, you got to do all
Yeah.
these things to get your body back in order. It's a lot like coming back from space. When they come back from the moon, or whatever, when people come back from the International Space
Right.
Station,
Right.
they don't just come back and instantly oh, I'm going to go see my wife and kids. Oh, it's great. No, you have to spend a certain
Yeah.
amount of time in a special area, a special room that's pressurized, and the pressure changes over a number of days to reacclimate yourself
Yep.
to the planet, because you've been out there in a place that has no gravity for so long. So it's very similar.
Yes, jellyfish are very squishy. That's a good point. I think we can learn a lot from sea creatures when it comes to how we would fare in the coming whatever happens, like whatever gigantic catastrophe happens to create the Greys, or create the Nordic. The Nordics would be easy. The Nordics are basically us from today, really. I mean, if you really sit down and think about it, they're really us from today. I mean, they're just a little bit taller and their hair is a little bit blonder than most people's. But
And
I
that's
find
interesting too,
that to be
because
interesting.
it's like, why are they like us and the Greys aren't?
Right. But the Greys they're very humanoid. They're bipedal. They, have a pretty big head. We have pretty big heads. They can use their mind to do some things. We can use our mind to do some things. We've all seen a couple episodes of Stan Lee's Humans where they were had superpowers. We know more about outer space and even other planets than we do about our oceans. I think it's because of the air pressure. That's why. I don't know if the pressure is bad in space, but in the deep sea, if you go too far, you'll basically explode.
Yeah. And we know that because of the not too long ago,
the Titanic sub.
Yeah, the Titanic sub tragedy. It's crazy because there's so much of the planet covered in water, and there's so much down there. There's so many depths that we could still get to, but we haven't been able to solve that pressure problem. Where in space, there's no pressure. Space is just open. It's a lack of all these things. And it's an interesting little contradiction that we can't investigate our own oceans as much as we can in space.
Yeah. Well, like I said, the pressure itself would be enough to kill you. You go down too far, it's over for that. Don't they have pure black eyes? Maybe that's because they spend, and that's what I think too. Having to adapt to a dark part of ourselves, are the darkness, not only outside but inside. Because they're very like Spider said, they're very logical. They're very to the point. They're not goofballing. All right, they're not the Nordic aliens. The Nordic aliens tend to be friendly and very nice and very giving and very sweet. So you have to wonder if they're both created, or if the Nordics came with the Vikings, and maybe the Nordics are the Vikings in terms of their gods and goddesses. Maybe they are, all those Vikings. Maybe they are. Maybe they're Odin. Maybe they're Thor. I don't know how that works.
We do have a lot of precedent for assuming that a lot of the ancient potential deities were possibly people from another world.
Yes.
We don't know that. We can't prove that, and we can't say that for sure. They could be all made up, or they could be all real, or they could be actual deities. Like, I don't want to invalidate anybody's personal religious preferences, but when you look at it, most of the earliest spiritualities and religions all say, well, they came from the sky.
Right.
The Sumerians said they came from the sky, and then they came from the ocean because they landed in the ocean and then came out. You have the water under the water, which is the Abzu.
Yep.
So it's interesting when you apply it from a scientific perspective that they came here, they had things that we didn't, they could do things that we couldn't.
Yep.
And so obviously they're a greater being than us, when maybe they are just us from farther ahead, and they're coming back to check on our progress. Or maybe something has happened along the line and they said, well, maybe we can go back and fix it. And I don't think they've managed to fix it yet, because we're still pretty screwed up here. But who knows?
Fix it? How did they say? Like, what would it do after they fixed it?
That's a good question. Like, because I don't think we would notice. It wouldn't be fixing us where we're at. It would fix for them later. Like, we would just advance in a better direction, quote unquote, to them.
I agree.
Or maybe we wouldn't. Maybe it's just predestined.
Maybe. But I still think that because we're afraid of these things. We're afraid of gray aliens. They say, that people say, don't ride with them, don't do nothing. But they've talked to the president. Eisenhower and Truman met with grays. So what do you think about that?
That's also interesting. I remember, like, that was quite a while back. So there's less of a chance we can verify that kind of stuff. We have to rely on second and third hand accounts.
Right.
In the modern era, we've had people in positions of power say, oh, yeah, if I get elected to such a position, I'm going to go and find out the truth. Like Bill Clinton said, I'm going to go to Area 51 and I'm going to find out what's there. And then we never found out what was there.
No, that's like Al Capone's vault.
Like, I don't know if he actually went and they were just like, oh, yeah, this is what we have. You can't tell anybody about that. Oh, okay. But it's the same thing. I think even Trump said the same thing. I think he was like, oh, yeah, I'll go find the aliens, and then didn't.
Every president said they're going to open up Area 50, Area 51, but they're not going to.
Yeah,
the government's not going to risk that, because then what else can we do? What other options do we have besides that? Or how smart are we that we can do that?
And you have to wonder, is that because they went there and they saw something and they were like, okay, I understand why we can't tell people. Right. Or was it because, well, there's nothing really there and I don't want to look like a goofball by saying there's nothing there.
Right.
You don't know which direction to go with it. It just fuels more conspiracy theories.
What?
Conspiracy theories. I stumbled all over that.
It's fine. We missed you. We're glad you're back.
Yeah, my bad speaking just kind of blah 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 blah.
So let's say this does happen, right? And humanoid aliens come back. What do you think would be the way to tell them apart from regular people?
It's another good question because it depends on how far from us that they've evolved. That gets into the Uncanny Valley,
Mm-hmm.
which we've talked about before, which is a
We have.
super. I love everything about the Uncanny
It's
Valley.
fantastic, actually.
It's a great theory because what do you do when you encounter something that you feel like this should be familiar, but it isn't?
Yep. It's uncannily familiar.
And that's what I think we're going to run into. We're going to run into people who are they're not quite right. And maybe we have. Maybe we've gone out in the world and we've met somebody briefly for just a few minutes and we've had a weird encounter and there was something not right about them and then you never see them again.
And I've known a lot of people like that. That I mean, not personally, no, but like you just see them, and you're like, man, you're off. You just know they're
Yeah,
off. And I think that's. But here's the thing with that: are they going to eradicate that too? Like, are they going to be able to make perfect human beings, people
maybe.
that don't die? That because that's a whole nother level, though. If you can't die, that means your cellular tissue is able to respawn, and you can be any race you want. So that'd be a very
Even
very interesting. Go ahead.
even that is because then you get people like, oh, there's been a car accident. Oh, so and so's been hurt. They're taken to the hospital, and then within like a few hours, oh, I'm fine, and they walk out of the hospital, and you never see them again. And you get stories like that.
Yeah,
You
all the
get
time.
stories of people who've been in these circumstances. They're unhurt. They're mysterious. They don't have a connection to anybody else. They don't have like you can't backtrack their family or anything.
Yep.
They've got no identification, and then they just disappear. They just seem to go away.
It's easier to look for your ancestors if you live in another country than to try to look them up in the United States. It's an absolute pain in the U.S. I don't know if you guys knew that, but yeah, it's not. It's not a fun thing. Um.
Boo.
Okay. Getting to the next thing here, Michael Masters. He wrote a UFO book. Now, Michael Masters is a professor of biological anthropology at Montana Technological University, and in Butte, Montana, Masters wrote a book titled "Identified Flying Objects: A Multiple Disciplinary Approach to the UFO Phenomenon." In the book, Masters himself states that the object is to spur new and informed discussion regarding the concept of alien beings being from the Earth or from the future, who he names extratemporalists. Extratemporalists. Masters notes the closest of alien features such as bipedal, hairless, humanoid beings with large brains and eyes and mouth or small mouth and small nose. The science, technology, and engineering of these visitors mirror our own in ways that if the current piece of science, technology, engineering were to be sped up, it most certainly match or come close to the technology that is being used by the aliens we so read about. So basically, find a place to sleep. Well, give me some money so I can get a bed ready for you, so I can make a hot meal. I mean, that's pretty much what it says. Masters goes on to say that by using a comprehensive analysis of constant patterns of long-term biocultural change throughout human evolution, as well as recent advances in our understanding of time and time travel, we may begin to consider the future possibility in the context of a currently unexplained phenomenon. She's basically saying, you could talk about it, and that's cool to talk about and all. So, yeah, we are. You just don't know yet. But yeah, we are.
I joked all the time that my daughter's an alien baby, and I tell her that, and she laughs at me and says, "No, I'm not."
Should I tell her that she's an alien baby too? Then she'll believe it.
She might because she's an alien baby.
And alien babies almost believe everything you tell them. They are alien babies for a reason. So what do you guys think? What are your guys' thoughts on the concept of aliens being humans from the future? Star children are very interesting. I've met star children, and some of them are really, really nice, and others are very, very different from what I can tolerate, we'll put.
I have also met some people who said they were star children who were not. That's the nicest way I can say that. I can say a lot of things that are not particularly fair or
Yes.
nice, but I'm not going to.
But what I think is most fascinating here is the evolutionary traits of a person trying to evolve to that next level. That's tough. I love that idea, and I think aliens are humans from outer space with advanced technology. That's a possibility too. That's the one thing people don't really understand truly and fully is what if the weapons got, or what if our weapons got DNA, alien DNA over them? What if we knew how to use it, but they knew how to use them?
Mm.
That's something to think about. Well, we're getting ready to wrap it up here. You got any last thoughts?
Well, everybody knows that I'm a big fan of the ancient astronaut theory.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the fact, well, as far as we know, it's a fact
Mm-hmm.
of time dilation and all that other kind of stuff about
Yep.
how time works the farther you get away from a location and come back. We have to assume, if we take that as fact, that other visitors have been here in our past before, and why wouldn't they come back to check? Why wouldn't somebody be curious to check on what's here? It may not be like a sanctioned thing, like it may not be a program where, like, oh yeah, we're gonna go back every so many years and check on our primitive ancestors. It could just be, hey, I'm curious. I want to see what's going on at that planet that supposedly we came from or that we
Yeah.
visited in the past. Let's take a look.
Wow.
And because it's all clinical, it's all
Right.
logical. It's like, oh well, let's just pick up a few and check them over and see. And then you get the abductions and you get the
Yep.
experiments and whatnot. But it's interesting that we're a focal point of this because we have not seen direct evidence of any other life in the universe other than what's on the planet. And you have to assume, with so many planets and so many everything out there, that there has to be life somewhere.
I agree 100%.
And so it puts us in a weird position. Like, where do we go from here? Do we assume that everything that we see could be an alien presence, or do we assume that life is super rare and we're one of maybe a billion other planets that has life? It's hard to say. It's all hypothetical. It's all very, very interesting, though.
Yeah, I agree very much so. I think that looking to the future and what we are and what we could become might do that. Do you think Elon Musk should continue his push to go to and inhabit Mars, or should he build a sub? I think he should go to Mars. I think there's some serious history on that planet that most people just kind of overlook. They're like, "Nah, that's Mars. It's kind of there's no way. There's
And
no way
everybody's
you're
gone
gonna
to
get
the
out
moon
there."
so far. Like,
Yeah,
Japan just went to the moon, I think. Or was it China? Well, no, it was Japan. Like, there's been a Japanese lander, an Indian lander, a
mm,
Chinese lander, Russian landers, and us on the moon. So we know we went to the moon. If anybody says we never went to the moon, one of those guys would have been like, yeah, those Americans,
yeah.
they
They'd
never
have been
went to
like,
the moon.
"Nah, the
We
Americans
went up
lied.
there,
There's
we
the
looked
moon."
around, there's nothing from them up here.
Agreed.
It's just them faking it. So,
Agreed.
but yeah, I think checking out Mars is very, very, very worthwhile. I think
Yeah, I
there's
agree.
definitely
100%.
something there. I think hopefully if more countries send stuff up to Mars, I think we'll be able to get a lot of good data and we'll find something, because we always find these weird pictures and whatever they send back that's been sanitized for us. There's something there.
I agree. What do you think about Elon Musk should continue to push to go to and inhabit Mars, or should he build a sub? I would push. Like I said, I'm saying Mars. You're saying Mars too.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
like the problem with the sub is you're not going to be able to get out at all at any point. You're stuck. You are stuck in that submarine until it docks back to shore. You subs don't have windows you just open. They have a top hatch. You'd have to go surface to get out of a submarine. You'd have to actually surface. So I think submarines are very interesting, though. So that's a very cool sort of concept. But we don't have that. What are you going to do? Hide the medicine until they get older and then they can take the medicine? You know what I mean? There's a lot of factors involved here that I don't think people are getting. Like the smaller end stuff of this is going to be damn near impossible if we think about it. Nothing. I thought you had something to add to it.
No, I was letting you go because I've been interrupting a bunch.
No, you're fine. So I think that me personally, yeah, definitely it could. Like Masters here, Michael Masters, he goes on to say, we just talked about it, that by using a comprehensive analysis of consistent patterns of long-term biocultural change throughout human evolution, as well as recent advances in our understanding of time and time travel, we may begin to consider this future possibility in the context of a currently unexplained phenomenon. Now, here's where it gets interesting. There was parts and talks of one of the people saying, "No, I found a similar one." It said that it did like basically like the whole Y2K scare thing of like, hey, do this or else, so everybody went and downloaded it. But I think that we don't need it, to be honest with you. I get it if you want it for the perks, but in terms of like renting stuff, you can find everything you want online. And I wonder if these aliens that are like us, if they in fact found everything they read online. If that makes sense. I think that makes sense.
So it's almost like they evolved before we had maybe internet, and they shared information differently. So we're still moving in a technological information sharing way, whereas they're more in a biological information sharing way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's possible too. There could have been a split off. And that's getting into alternate universe things, and that's getting, I think, a little outside the scope of what we're looking at. But potentially their version of the future doesn't rely on technology like ours does. Ours has the internet, and ours has all these different ways of
entertainment
technology, whereas theirs doesn't. Theirs is all biological, and they've had to adapt in different ways. And maybe they don't have, maybe their technology is very focused on very specific things.
Yep.
Rather than very broad, which is where we're at right now.
Yeah. No, I agree. I 100% agree. You got any closing thoughts for us tonight?
No, I think that about covers it.
I think you did a fantastic job. Ladies and gentlemen, please, please, please consider sponsoring the show or even donating. You can donate over at our Patreon, patreon.com/thisuncanny earth. If it's not there, let us know and I will fix that. So make sure if you can help, obviously. Devil says, I think humanity is intended to be a hive mind and we just fall for it. But maybe that will be our evolved form one day of the future. Yeah, I mean, you'll have that. You'll have the idea of the sort of. I've heard of Dr. Greer, but I haven't listened to a lot of his works. Is there one you recommend? And make sure you like, comment, share.
Like, comment, subscribe.
I said share.
Share too. Like, comment, subscribe, share.
I don't like share.
Like, comment, subscribe, share. It's 4 things.
I did a Vlad TV interview.
It's 4.
I'll have to check. I think I know who you're talking about. I think so. Yeah, but I wouldn't trust the thing Vlad says. You know him; he'll make some stuff up or like tell the police that you're talking. But I know who Dr. Greer is. So Speeders is contagious. I don't know what that means. Do you know what that means?
I have an alcohol problem, probably. Who knows? I don't know.
All right, guys.
I'm going to do an intervention on Spider tomorrow.
I'm going to show up and just drink, and they'll be like, sir, you can't enable him. I'm like, I can enable who I want to enable.
Sir.
I want to thank GZDRFEV. He feels in order to push the one world in government, they will fake an invasion that condense power. He thinks that's why they were quick. Yeah, I saw that. I heard that by using Project, what was it? Bluebeam or whatever. They were going to put there. No, I thought Blue Book was the actual like project itself, not the utensil. Anyways, that if you can create a toucan, what do you do? There's River Lemon. Hey, River Lemon, what's up, buddy? We're getting ready to get out.
And at the end of the show.
He did. That's all right. Go back and listen to it. It's been good. One thing I want to point out here is what Master says. He says that by using a comprehensive analysis of consistent patterns of long-term biocultural change throughout human evolution, as well as recent advances in our understanding of time and time travel, we may begin to consider this future possibility in the context of a currently unexplained phenomenon. So, there y'all go. Anyways, guys,
Potential.
join us next week where we are going to be talking about if you have ever made a pact with the devil. If you have ever in your life made a pact with the devil, we would like to know about it. And we're going to talk about it. We're going to be here on the show. We're going to talk about it. So make sure you're watching the show. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. Make sure you tell your friends about us. That helps in its own ways. If you want to sponsor us, please reach out to either of us. And from me to GZDR forever, much love, my friend. Thank you for stopping by. Deadpoolhead, much love, my friend. Thanks for stopping by. GZ, I got GZ already. River Lemon 68, thank you very much. And Apple was here a bit ago, so thank you very much to Apple. And of course, our good buddy James. And of course, Sound Zeus. I saw Sound Zeus kind of sneak in. And Scruffy. So thank you guys for making this show even better than it was last week. So keep getting better, so you got to keep watching. Next week, like I said, have you ever made a pact with the devil? Let us know. We want to know. We want to know. Feel free to send us any anonymous stuff that you would like to send. If you don't want to do it publicly, then you can do it through a letter, and I will read it live here on this Uncanny Workspace. So you guys be good to each other, and as always, why be boring when you can be uncanny? We will see you folks next week. Peace.